very excited about this next panel, which is called We Tried That. And everything here is about taking something back to your agency and giving it a go and flying it up the flagpole and seeing what happens. So I'm excited to bring on stage 4 panelists from agencies that have done something novel, progressive, brave, new in this last year. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Beth Riley Kelly, the Chief Operating Officer of the Martin Agency. Patricia Korth McDonnell, Partner and Managing Director of West Coast Office of Huge. Jean BATTHANY, ECD of DDB Chicago. And lastly, Lucy FAREY-JONES, Founder and Executive Strategy Director at Venables Bell. So should I come sit with you guys? Mm-hmm. Am I mic'd? I'm mic'd. Yeah, do you mind?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. You guys can hear me? Perfect. Okay, so as I said in the intro, each of your agencies have tried something different this year to help support a more equal and humane environment. So I want us to start one by one. Let's just go down and just tell our audience in a few sentences what the initiative was, and then we'll dive deeper with each of you. But just describe what it was. We'll start with Lucy and work our way down to Beth.
So we started our agency in 2001 in San Francisco, which was probably the worst time to start a business in terms of things plummeting, but a great time to get office space. It was like $15 a square foot. Now in San Francisco, VentureBeat actually last week did a piece on it's $67 a square foot. And actually one of the thoughts we had as business owners was to try and help another company out. So we ran what we called the office space competition, where we advertised on Craigslist for any company that was trying to get off the ground to come in and interview with us for $10 a square foot office space for a year. And we picked 4 nascent companies who joined Venables Bell. I don't call it incubation or anything sexy like that. They're just literally sharing our space. And one of the companies is a really awesome company called Wisdom Labs. And they were formed, an ex-Google guy, the ex-innovation fellow for the mayor of San Francisco, and a TED Med doctor formed this company to deal with workplace resilience, because what they were seeing in Silicon Valley was massive burnout. And so they formed a company to try and figure out how to, we talked about work-life balance, but how to make people thrive in the workplace versus just survive it. And we've decided to become their guinea pigs. So in return for this $10 a year rent, they're actually running their program on us. So the program is a 12-week course in mindful workday. And first of all, I thought it was just, meditation, West Coast, mumbo jumbo. And then I read into it and I got talking to the founders and I realized that actually it was much more than that. So we put about 22 people in our agency through it. Really cool. Initially, totally voluntarily, you take blood, and then at the end of 12 weeks, you take another blood test. And hopefully what you see is a reduction in the stress, essays. And the interesting thing is, when you do this meditation stuff, you definitely feel calmer, but what's really cool is it also teaches you to quieten that mind, that voice in your mind. We all today talked about everyone thinking, I'm going to be fired today.
Yeah.
A lot of meditation actually teaches you how much you live in the past and the present and how little you live in the now. And actually that releases a lot more creativity when you can live in the now. That's why you have all your best ideas in the shower. And so there's been a lot more creativity around the office as a result of it. And the third thing is staring stress in the face and actually, rather than trying to run from it, using it as an enabler. So a lot of recent research has suggested that stress can actually really help if you lean into it. And so rather than the fight or flight response, Wisdom Labs teaches us about the tend and befriend response, which is if you're feeling stressed, apparently the best thing to do is to either reach out and help someone else or just put your hand up and ask for help. So it's been a really interesting impact on our culture, seeing people being able to say help or just generally a much more compassionate place to be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not incubation, but it's something much more exciting, I think.
Very cool. All right, so mindfulness. Jean, tell us about DDB's initiative.
Sure. We're going to call it "We're Trying This" as opposed to "We Tried That." It's a work in progress. I would say inspired by some work we did last year for International Women's Day. DDB Chicago helped create a website called Empower that celebrated all the women in the DDB. Is that better when I go like that? I'm gonna. It's attached to my bra strap, so I'm gonna have to go like this. I didn't even know where to put my head. So we created this website with the folks at DDB New York and North America to celebrate the women across the DDB network globally and to give them a place to talk about Twitter, about what empowers them. And from this website, there was some press and PR that was created, and American Airlines reached out to DDB and said, you know, we'd love to hear more about it. Can you create a film for our in-flight video? And so a request was put out. Mark O'Brien said, absolutely, we'd love to do this. We'd love to have, who's Mark O'Brien, president of DDB North America. And we were looking for more of a program based on the women and the women's initiatives. And so he tasked Janet Gilley and Mary Barkerich. So Janet's ECD at DDB New York, and Mary's a director of strategy. And so they got together a bunch of women from DDB New York and started to, different levels and different disciplines, and they started to talk about what they could make this video about. And I think the consensus from that meeting was, you know, we're a little tired of this being just a women's issue and kind of pushed to the side is what can men do for women? And so what they did is they went back to the roots of DDB and how it started. And really, DDB, and Bill Burback in particular, was the catalyst for the creative revolution of advertising. And I know that sounds fairly big, but what Bill Burback did is he believed in diversity, and he changed the way that we work. And how we work today as a result of that is he partnered art directors and copywriters together, because before in the past it was copywriters would write and then it would go to a different floor for art directors to make it pretty. I would not have liked that very much at all. And so he not only did that, is changed the way we work, he put a woman, Phyllis Robinson, as the head of copy, which was absolutely unheard of in the Mad Men times of advertising. And so what the creative work that resulted from this new normal is where we are today. But I think that, and then they took a step back and said, that's our DNA. But we've gone away from that. And to be honest, as a network, we can be doing much better to have women back in leadership positions across all disciplines, creative particularly, but my passion point, but across all disciplines. So Janet and Mary and their team birthed Better by Half. And Better by Half is an initiative that we're embracing fully now, and it's something we've been talking about a lot, and now we're finally getting to action. The goal being to retain and promote more women across the DDB North America network. And how we're doing that is there's a board, and I was invited from DDB Chicago with my Better by Half partner, Mark Hansen, who's in the office, bringing a little bit man-ambassador to the room, just so you know. And so we, with 10 of others, we are part of the Better by Half board, which Janet is the president of. And what we then do is create committees in each separate office, so DDB Chicago, DDB California, DDB New York, Tribal DDB, and we were tasked with creating committees that were like-minded, right? So 50-50, men and women across all the networks in each one, in different disciplines and different levels. So creating this conversation that we've talked about so much here at 3%, if we're just women talking to women, then we're talking to ourselves. We got to start talking to people that are at that hiring level and change makers. And it really it's been a fresh conversation of let's identify, task one, identify the obstacles. And we're just coming out of the identify the obstacle stage, and we're moving into acts and activations, whether they're micro or macro. And what we're going to do is then deploy out a survey to then make sure to validate it across more people than these 10-person committees across the networks, and then move forward. And so hopefully next year we'll be talking about We Tried That.
We tried that. Okay, Patricia, tell us, you've done something that when we shared it on our Facebook page, it blew up. People loved what you did. Tell us what you did.
Sure. So we're trying that too. We started this year as well. And the Facebook page share was fun. So it's actually one of our creative directors, Jessica Bauer-Green, who, the way this came out is she's very fashionable, as these creative directors are. I'm not one of them. I'm doing my best today. But she was stopped on the street in San Francisco. She was the head of our San Francisco creative team. And they loved her outfits. It was actually like a style blog post. But one of the many questions they asked her was kind of, what are you excited about right now, or what's challenging you? And she was like, well, I'm a new mom, and I just had this baby, and came back to work as our first, part-time creative director ever in the history of Huge as the agency. So,
Part-time creative director.
yeah, it's great. So that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. Jessica was one of a few folks, we're a young agency, right? And we're just kind of aging up into all the issues you have as people have families. She was one of a few women we'd created kind of bespoke solutions for. And as that started coming together and there's more of these conversations happening, we actually took that as an opportunity to create a parental leave program, which we're implementing this year, which is for primary caregivers, so both fathers and mothers, which I think is important. But we have 3, I think, part-time female creative directors at this moment in history. So
Nice.
Very exciting. Yeah.
Excellent. All right, lastly, Beth, I'm glad to have you on this panel because there's been a lot mentioned already about wage equity. Tell us what the Martin Agency did.
So about 2 years ago, we embarked on what we're calling the deep dive salary compensation study. And we all tend to, in human resources or in my position as chief operating officer, you tend to rely on your the salary survey sources for setting your bands and your ranges. And we had talked about that we really wanted to do a deep dive into our own company and have a wonderful understanding of just where we needed to make some improvements in the levels and the ranges and where we were doing well. It was really a function of, we wanted to be more front-footed with salary and all conversations related to salary. So we had a third party. We hired a third-party consultancy to help us with this. We partnered with our human resources department. We had key internal stakeholder meetings with department heads and business unit leaders to really understand where were the pain points in their departments, where were the levels where they felt like they left too soon or they were having salary or wage issues. We got buy-in from the internal stakeholders, and we went out and put this thing into play. We ended up going back 10 years. We looked at over 350 titles over that and job descriptions over those 10 years. We drilled it down to 85. We felt like 85 would really give us a terrific understanding of where we stood. And then we went out to the market. And we went out to local, national, and global survey sources and really got what came back was an unbelievable understanding, so much better understanding of where we were as it related to salary. And we were able to put into play some actions to course correct where we needed to and to recalibrate in areas where we needed to. And the key really was the fact that this was owned by the leadership in the company and was something that we all felt very strongly about. We worked too hard to get talent to our companies. The last thing we want to do is turn around and lose talent because we don't have the right levels in place. So we were able to look at this. It was not only just from the standpoint of female to male, but it's, diversity and inclusion. It was recent hires compared to people who'd been on staff for a while. It was global, national, local, in between offices. So I can say with certainty that it was the first time we've had a study done of this nature. And for me personally, as the chief operating officer of the company, I want to be able to back up that when I look an employee in the eye and I can honestly say to that employee, you are being paid fairly and competitively, and I now can do that without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, you told me within 1/100th of a percent.
Yes,
you now have gender.
Actually, just being able to say that at a recent town hall meeting at our company, one of the questions was, do we pay women equally. And I was able to answer yes, and I could say it so confidently, yes we do, and it's within hundredths of a point.
Awesome. Okay, Lucy, I'm going to come back to you. You shared with me some stats that I'm sure all of us have heard about. 2014 was the year of mindful living, and it's no longer that meditation is for hippies and vegans. 74% of workers cite stress at work as significant, and it costs American companies $300 billion a year. When we spoke on the phone, I shared that one of the things that was an aha for me that I'm almost embarrassed to admit now, but when I started this movement, it was stressful, but it was good. And I always thought of stress as something awful that happened to you. And it was kind of a light bulb moment for me. Oh, I get it. You can invite things into your life that are awesome and welcome, but that are stressful nonetheless, and you still have to grapple with them. Yeah. And so we talked about how in advertising, we are never going to eradicate stress. In fact, those Wisdom Labs people, when they found out that the guinea pigs were advertising people, that's got to be like the most potent case study ever.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the people at Venables Bell and how they've indicated that what they've learned is being incorporated into their daily life?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, it's funny. I think if you looked at the advertising people's blood test level before and after, it would still be better before and after, just at a slightly higher level than everyone else. Yeah, I mean, what's really been great for me is recognizing stress. It's kind of what you're doing here with the 3%, is recognizing the problem is the first thing, right?
Yes.
And just being able to take a moment, and actually one of the things that our design director did, and I saw that and said, do it for me, is, I was going to show you guys, but it was to make my screensaver say, breathe. So when I unlock my cell phone, sorry, it's amazing how automatically I just unlocked it without showing you. It says breathe, and it's just that one little thing whilst I'm doing my 4-number code is very helpful. Because I think people think of meditation as like, I've got to sit there for like 3 hours. None of us in advertising have that attention span. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, another thing that I'll share is people have, basically it's called habit design. So you tie your desired action to something that you do all the time. So whether it's getting a coffee, or for me, it's going into a meeting. So every time I go into a meeting, I make sure I take 3 deep breaths. And you can really feel your heart rate go down. Our head of HR is taking deep breaths on her commute in, and I'm sure more deep breaths on her commute out every day. There are just little hacks that people are developing that don't actually have a huge investment in time. And we're seeing people pay off. Like there's something called the mindful minute, that you can literally set your iPhone timer for a minute. And it's incredible what that will do to the start of a meeting.
Yeah.
Take everybody's adrenals down. Maybe you start to think about your agenda, and is it a proactive, helpful agenda? And a minute doesn't actually take anything away from the meeting. In fact, I would say 29 minutes after a minute is better than a 30-minute meeting.
Yeah, excellent. Jean, when we spoke, one of the things you said that really jumped out at me was that you were named on the Council for Chicago for the Better by Half initiative, and then you were able to assemble some other team members to assist. And you purposefully chose a few people that were not the likely choices. And I loved that. Tell us who you chose. You don't have to name them by name, or you can choose to. But why is that important sometimes for us to enlist people that aren't already standing with their hands up?
Well, there were definitely people that we considered, and Mark Hansen and I created the committee in Chicago, and we were looking at half men and half women, different disciplines and different leadership levels, and to create an open forum so people felt comfortable to speak. We kind of created this cone of trust, and to hear it from different perspectives, right? So that, and there were 1 or 2 people, and my dear friend Chizzy, he's one of my favorite strategists at the agency, and he's phenomenal. He's phenomenally smart, and I love him on the team, and I love working with him. But he's a little old school sometimes in his thinking. And in the first meeting that we walked in, he goes, "Am I in trouble?"
Are you taking the piss out of British people?
No, not at all. He's Welsh, so yeah, I guess. But it's oh.
It's my bra is disattached again. So it was getting those diverse voices in the room. So it's, there were certainly people there that I know always like my posts when I get on my feminist soapbox or my women are equal soapbox, and there are people that I've worked with on a daily basis that are not necessarily aware of the unconscious biases that we deal with every day. So it's been an interest. It's already interesting having half men and half women, and then interesting to mix it up with men who are fully on board and men who are going, oh, there's an enlightening moment, and you can kind of bring people along the journey with you.
Yep, absolutely. I felt a little bit that way when we did our traveling events. There were certain cities we went to that were less friendly to our concept, and I'd be on the airplane going there thinking, I need to be there more than I need to be in the cities that already get it. But it can be hard to enlist the help of those people. So kudos to you for doing that. Patricia, tell me a little bit about, I loved the way you described how the process you made for your phase back is something that you revisit. It's not set in stone. You're learning from the people that are participating. I know you shared that Jessica actually changed offices. Tell us a little bit about how you've been able to be a little bit flexible and nimble in the execution of the phase back.
Sure. I mean, the whole program we put together, we based on these 4 or 5 women we'd been experimenting with. So we knew that experiment wasn't going to suddenly scale into a perfect solution. So the idea was more to open the opportunity to craft your plan of how to be a parent at Huge to everyone versus say, this is the thing you get to do. And it's been different for everybody, but a couple of the things we noticed, like Jessica did move from leading our San Francisco, which is now Oakland office, which is much larger, which is much more of a managerial role, to leading our Portland office, which is much more, it's a 15-person studio. So she's gone from managing a team of creative directors and focusing much more on management to a few large engagements that she's personally hands-on in. I also saw with her and a number of women I spoke to prepping for this, we started with the idea that 3 days a week would be great, right? You get 2 whole days off, you can manage your nanny really nicely, like everything fits. It's really hard to do 3 days a week, I think at any level, but especially at a senior level where people are depending on you for answers. So we're seeing more and more folks go to either 4 days a week or 5 days a week for 4.5 hours. But some people really love the 3 days a week. When I brought one woman on my team the idea of moving from 3 to 4 or to 5 at X hours because other people were finding more success with it, she took a weekend to think about it and said she was going to do it because she thought it was what I wanted and then realized it was making her really pissed at me for even suggesting it. So then she said no. So I think a lot of what we're learning is that you need flexibility, you need more time at home, you need less hours, but what shape that takes for each individual mom or dad kind of has to be a little different.
Yeah. Okay, I want to move on to Beth. One of the things that you said to me on the phone that I loved was you said, we are a communications industry, yet we don't communicate with our people around money. I would argue that we don't communicate with our people around anything this panel is about stress, about leadership, about maternity, or about money. And so tell me a little bit about how the reaction you have found when some of your managers sat their people down and said, you're getting a raise, and I'm going to tell you why. How people received that news and how it changed the loyalty within your employees.
Well, how would we feel? It'd feel pretty good, right? Honestly, I think the department heads, what I felt was incredible to watch is in embarking on this with our department heads and business unit leaders, we sent an immediate message to that group of leadership who you could argue are on the firing lines when it comes to, trying to keep people in our business and trying to engage their employees and to take care of them. And, as I said before, just you don't want to lose talent in this business. It's a long process getting the right people on board. But seeing them so, I'll say, confident now in their ability to have conversations with their employees is just huge. I feel like we gave them a bit of a gift there, that they're not kind of guessing, is this accurate? There's so much more confidence in the salaries and in the ranges. And, when we sat people down, I think we sent the immediate message to that employee that we value you. And we have done some research. We were pretty, transparent about it. We have updated our levels and our ranges based on the very latest information. And as a result of that, you're going to be getting an increase. It was a great feeling to be on the other side of that, because that's a conversation. None of us like to have conversations about money, I think. And as a whole, we just, it's like the worst thing you want to do. And employees don't like coming to supervisors and asking for money. Most don't. There are the select few who might dig it. But for us to be front-footed, for us to be proactive about it, made me feel really good about our company. So it was a great gift to us as leaders to be able to do that.
Yeah. And what I love is that I feel like this panel that's a hard metric that it's important to be honest about, but these other things matter as much. One of my favorite scenes in Mad Men was a huge fight between Peggy and Don. I don't know if you guys remember the scene. It was late at night. They were working a pitch, and she was so frustrated with him, and she screamed, "You never say thank you." And he said, "That's what the money is for."
Yep.
Remember that scene?
Yep.
And that was such an example of not understanding the many ways you make employees feel valued. So a commonality that I heard in speaking with each of you, and you can choose to talk about either of these things, but all of you talked about it being a stepped approach, meaning that you weren't saying that everything would be better by a particular place, and that there was metrics around it. Even if it's a blood draw, which you would think, like, how could you measure what Venables Bell is doing? Well, you can. So tell us, each of you, let's just go down, how has making it a stepped approach and something that you can revisit maybe made people more likely to embrace it, rather than we have to get to a particular finish line by a particular date?
Well, for us, I think obviously there was two things. There was like blood, right? Hey, the company wants to take your blood. Are you okay with that? So that had to be voluntary, right? And then also meditation. But meditation has a branding problem. And I think, it's funny. Like,
you guys could solve it.
Maybe we could, yeah. So it was really interesting, actually. I have a stat. I called the office this morning and I got them to run the numbers. 50% men and 50% women volunteered for the 22 places that we did. So it was really interesting that we got equal people stepping up and trying. And it was the more, adventurous, progressive types that tried it. But I think the fact there was a trial made it fine to just, dabble in. And I think what we've learned is, a 12-week course is a big commitment. We're now looking to roll it out in small things. So whether it's, Mindful Monday meditation or just walking Wednesdays is something we're trying, where you're literally just getting out and walking around the block for lunch. Does so much for your health, both mentally and physically. You can't believe it. I'm a huge proponent of walking now. I got myself a Fitbit. I'm going around. So yeah, we're just trying to bring it down to bite-sized levels and hopefully infiltrate 180 people, because they can't all do the 12 weeks.
And I'll bet it's contagious that when they see the others.
Yeah, especially if you do the compassion thing where you're tend and befriend. That's really changing. I mean, the culture's a pretty nice one already, but it's really nice to kind of nurture that side of what we've created.
Yeah. And Jean, your whole initiative is stepped in its name, better by half, not better entirely.
Absolutely. And I think starting with that, we're not saying that we're going to get to 50-50 leadership by next year. We're saying if we have 50-50 representation in the conversation, then we'll make more advances, and we're committed to those advances. And we've talked a lot internally about let's get our base numbers, and then let's set goals. Where are we going to be in 5 years? If we want to set a 5-year goal or a 1-year goal, and just try to be realistic with the micro actions and macro actions. And one of the things that's been so beneficial about this conference is it gives us the language and we can take all these tools back and start talking about what we're seeing, what we're identifying, and what are the macro and micro actions that we can take and put into place.
Right, right. And Patricia, tell us, I mean, I just have to tell you anecdotally that I heard someone here that's pregnant say that they were interested in talking to your agency because they knew you were friendly to women that have children.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, how can you put a price tag on that? But tell us, how you are kind of taking a stepped approach around this.
I mean, I think part of the reason we're taking a stepped approach is not just to experiment for us, but there's no one out there that's like, look, they've solved parental leave and it's perfect and we can aspire to be them as much as we can afford.
Except Sweden.
Right, except Sweden, who I don't know how they get anything done. I worked there for 6 months, it was horrible, but God bless them and their socialism. I think nobody within the States, and certainly nobody within this brutal industry, has nailed it in a way that's retaining women and families the way that we want to. So
Yep.
to even suggest that we're going to have a good one off the bat would be ludicrous. So I think we have to start with experimentation. And I think the measurement for us is retention. I think especially in creative, a number of the women that we saved by giving all this flexibility to weren't going to drop out necessarily of working. They were going to freelance, because especially if you're a great senior creative, you can freelance. And then
Yep.
you pick and you take 3 weeks off. So it was about keeping them within our family
Yep.
as opposed to keeping them working. They were going to work. They were just going to work in a way that worked for them. So we're trying to make working the way that works for you work at huge.
Yeah, it's
And
so
that's a great-
smart.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you interrupted, and I said sorry. Where's the
Oh my gosh.
Wow,
$2.
where's
Money
the-
jar, money jar. Give me $100.
Deep breath.
Breathe.
Thank you. So helpful. We got
See,
this.
that's tending.
Yeah.
Pending.
Thank you. I completely bug out. Whatever. No, that's ultimately the goal of Better by Half, is how do we retain our female talent and how do we promote from within? Because
Yes.
we know we have the numbers coming in, and we know we've
Yes.
got 53%, 54% of women in our network. We just aren't as good as getting them up
Right.
to the top.
Right. And Beth, tell us a little bit about the metrics that you're watching, because I mean, obviously you already shared the best one of all, which is the accuracy with which you can say. Have you started to notice, or is it too soon, about your retention? Or your recruitment? I mean, I think that could be a very powerful recruiting tool.
I think probably both. You know, again, just being able to say with confidence, here's where we are. And, you know, one of the pros that came out of this was, you know, now that we had this like richness of data, and we can drill down into salaries so deeply now and cut it in so many different ways. One of the things that we've realized is that if we do something on an annual basis, we can do kind of a modified version of this audit on an annual basis, and really stay up with it more than we were doing before. But something else we've also done is we have a dedicated HR, she's a senior leader in the Human Resources Department, and we have now assigned her, she's certified as a compensation specialist with World
Tina.
at Work. Tina, yes. You know that.
Yeah.
Everybody loves
Everyone
Tina.
needs a Tina.
Everyone loves Tina. Yes, she is certified in this, both globally and through World at Work. And so, you know, she is the one, I think before, kind of everyone in human resources owned it. But now I've got this one person whose job is, one of her responsibilities is staying on top of this, being able to know, pick up the phone and call Tina and say, where are we on this level? In terms of, just real quickly, how we went out and kind of communicated it, you know, we found areas of the company where we were doing really well. I mean, I'll say surprisingly, we felt great about how the results came back. But there were a couple of areas where we needed to do some work. And one of the things that we did was a step approach there. In the areas where we felt like we couldn't go immediately to, you know, from A to Z, we were able to have a conversation with the employee and say, here's where we're going to take you today, and here's where we're going to take you in 6 months, and then this will be where this is the place where we believe you need to be in 6 months. I think what that showed too for our employees was, you know, person on the receiving end, was that we put a real thoughtful approach together for them, you know, kind of customized for them.
Awesome. All right, we have a minute and a half left, and we live in a Twitter-sized world. I want each of you to give a Twitter-sized piece of advice to any of the agencies in attendance here that are thinking, maybe we should try X. Whatever their X is, what piece of advice, very short and tweetable, would you give to them as they embark on that?
No pressure then.
Or anyone can go first that's prepared. Are there any copywriters here?
As they embark on salary?
No, on anything that they feel inspired to be a we tried that within their agency culture. What piece of advice would you give them as they try something bold and new and untested?
Do it. I mean, just
do it.
sound like Nike. Just do it, though. It's, you know, you can always, this isn't the Twitter part, or this isn't the tweet part. It's just go for it. You know what? You can always turn around and go, yeah, that didn't work.
Right.
Try it. Too many
Yeah.
times we sit back and
And
worry
we want
about
our
it.
clients to try things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just do it.
Patricia, what would be your one piece of advice?
I guess keep it simple. I think trying to solve everything and over-orchestrate the perfect system will always result in taking too damn long to do it, right? So just do one little piece of it, or just make it flexible.
Nice.
I have to use Cindy Gallup's words, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Besides tweet the fucking shit out of this conference. No, that's okay. That call it out, right? If you see something, to call it out, and it's sometimes there are very correctable things. Like I look at DDB Chicago, and we have a 50-50 executive leadership team, and the problem was that it was only a couple of white guys talking all the time. So we could easily make a change, and I know it's already happening, to bring the women out and give them a voice, or not, they have a voice. Have them be heard and put them in the forefront and celebrate the women that we do have, and really activate the number one thing that we found was you can't be what you can't see.
Yeah.
So if those women are in the agency, make sure they are shining.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Lucy.
Yeah, I've got it now. Thank
got it.
Thank you very much for the time.
She did her breathing and it came to her.
It's simple. I think as a business owner, it's really crucial to realize that your employees are your biggest asset.
Yes,
You just
talent.
have to do whatever it takes to treat them that way.
Nice. All right. Thank you, ladies, for being bold.